Good morning and welcome to WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry kitchen studio. I'm Mark Frechette.
And I'm Scott Guerin, the Research and Development Chef here at Modernist Pantry.
Now, you've come to rely on WTF to introduce you to new and exciting ingredients, to solve everyday kitchen problems, or to make completely new experiences. And today we've probably got the OG of technological advancements in food. It's the mold from which most East Asian cuisine stems from, and I'm very literal about that word mold.
Yes, because we're talking about Koji today, and Koji is the mold that you use to put on rice or grains, and you can make everything from soy sauce to sake to miso right in your own home.
Yeah, you were sharing with me an article the article wasn't from 300 BC, but it referenced something from 300 BC that was like, oh, Koji's a technological marvel. That's high praise for 300 BC. But it's still kind of, and we'll talk about some of the traditional uses, it's still kind of being rediscovered right now for some exciting new uses. Plus those traditionals are really starting to, not make a comeback, but really starting to earn their spot in cuisine. So I guess the easy question to start with is, what is Koji?
So Koji is a mold that you use to put on rice, and I'll go through the basics of making it. You're going to take some rice and you're going to soak it in water. Usually the rice or grains, whatever it happens to be, high in starch, you want that. So you put it on the rice, you soak the rice in water, you take it out, you're going to steam it. If you boil it, it'll break down the grains of rice too much and you'll end up with this weird paste that doesn't really work for making Koji.
Great for holding walls together.
Yes, exactly. So I take it and you just steam it just to the point where you can break it with your fingernails, al dente if you will, if you want to use another cooking term. And then cool it to about 108 degrees. That's where Koji likes to live. You're going to sprinkle on the Koji spores. So inside the bag, when you purchase the Koji, there will be a little, a tiny packet of spores in there. You're going to measure it out. It's very simple. It's for 1 kilogram of rice before cooking, it's going to be 1 gram of the Koji spores. So you can get a lot out of one of these packages. You're going to massage it in. When you massage the rice together, it makes these little scratches, and that's where the Koji mold gets in, and the spores are allowed to start to flower or bloom, if you will.
Sure.
You're going to put it into a proof box, and that's kind of why I have this out here.
Okay.
If you don't have a proof box and you have a room that is just dark, not too wet in there, not too humid. It's kind of hard right now with
today that would be tricky.
Yes, but you want it to be not too humid. You just want it to be in a nice, temperature controlled environment and dark, because the mold needs that dark area to kind of grow. You put it in, and after about a day, it's going to start to create its own heat. At that point, you toss it, you give it a little bit of fresh air so it doesn't overheat itself, and then you just monitor the temperature for a few days. And you go from rice that looks like the rice that you get in a bag at a grocery store to something that looks just like this, which is like a block. You're going to take that, and at this point, you can either make something out of it, you could dry it, or you can wrap it up and put it in the refrigerator.
Now, you're taller than me. Cole, can we go to the overhead? Can you pull that up? Like, I can't stress enough how adorably fuzzy this rice actually is. All right, now some of the traditional uses of Koji happen to be some of the East Asian staples. What have we got over here? We've got...
So you can't really go a week without having something with a little bit of soy sauce or tamari, which is a byproduct of making miso.
Yeah.
Miso, it brings umami to so many things, and where food is kind of really broad right now, people put soy sauce in like every barbecue sauce that you have, or any sauce that needs a little bit of richness to it. So it's kind of surprising that something that is so old is in something that we eat every single day, and not a lot of people know how to make this.
Now, you talked about using, the traditional approach is using rice, but also you noted that any starch can be used. I think David Chang's doing something exciting right now.
Yeah,
right?
So he seeks out local grains from around him, and he uses that to inoculate the mold spores, and then make his own Koji from different things. And each one of those is going to give a slightly different, flavor, texture to your final product. It
reminds me a little bit about, like, you're a big fan of the local kimchis. Yeah. Kind of like, okay, it's a very, very, very traditional thing made very, very, very local, and has the ability to span some cuisine experiences because of that. All right, so we talked, we kind of said a little bit about, how it's, not how it's made, but rather the preparation of it. I think one of the things that's important to point out is this is a little bit different than what you might find just looking on the internet for koji, because you're very likely to find, what is it, granularized koji?
Yeah, so what you'll find is what's called rice malt, and you'll get it in packages, and that's the rice that is already finished, and it is in, you know, bags ready to go for whatever you're going to make.
Yeah.
With that, you don't necessarily know what type of koji mold it is, and you don't know what you can use it for. And you were holding the packages. We have two different types here. We have shirayuri, which is a white mold. This is made from shirayuri. This allows you to make things like sake, or this marinade right here is called shio koji, and we can talk a little bit about that later. The other one is shiragiku, which is a darker, you know, it has more browning to it, which has a little bit more umami and can be used for things like this shoyu koji or miso, which I made about 2 years ago at this time.
Yeah.
That's a really amazing process, and we can talk more later about
I will say, yeah, your miso recipe is pretty amazing, because it's like total prep time, 10 minutes, total recipe time, 2.5 years. But yeah, we'll jump into that a little bit. So one of the other things too is now, once you, this is actually also a good spoiler alert, once you've made your, we call it a rice malt, it's not technically, but once you've made that, you don't have to use it all at once. Like this would go a spectacularly long way, but you tend to make a little bit more. So this isn't just how you might be able to get it if you weren't concerned about being in control of it. This is also how you can store it, correct?
Yeah, so if you have a food saver vacuum sealer at home, you can do that. If you have a dehydrator, even better, you can throw it in there and then just toss it into a Ziploc bag and keep it in the pantry. Or if you wanted to and you're going to use, you know, say you make a small batch of it and you want to use it this week, you can just toss it in a Ziploc bag without drying it and throw it in the refrigerator. But the most common way people are going to do it is if you have an oven, turn it down very low as you can possibly go, even if it has a warming setting. Put it on there with the oven cracked and just let it dry in there naturally, and then boom, you can have it for, you know, safekeeping up to 3 months to a year, depending on how dry you get it.
Now, one of the exciting things about koji is also the thing that gives it its superpowers, and we were talking about this before we started shooting today. That's the enzymes. Can you talk a little bit about?
So koji is really amazing is that it produces enzymes that break down almost everything. Proteases, amylase, which breaks down starch. Protease, obviously, or protease breaks down proteins. There's a lipase, which just breaks down fat, and then also the ability to break down tannins. So if you wanted to put koji on fruits or anything that happens to have tannins, you could absolutely do that and break down that chalky kind of feeling you get from a tannin. This is the only mold that I know that produces all the enzymes that break down basically everything. And chefs are doing a lot of really amazing things with this. And I sent you an article which was like mind-blowing.
Yeah, you were like, hey man, take a look at these fuzzy pork chops. So like, that seems intentional.
So you can inoculate the pork chop itself, you know, and have the mold grow right on top of it. And once it grows, it'll make the enzymes that'll then break it down, and you can have a different texture of you know, pork, seafood, whatever you happen to put it on, as long as you have a dehydrator or something that is going to keep the temperature. But when we're talking about that, we're also making a perfect environment for mold growth. So if you see anything that is not a beautiful white mold like this, even the shiragiku that we talked about has a slight, it'll be a slight brown to it.
Yeah.
If you see anything that is dark, like close to black,
bad,
throw it away. Greenish blue,
bad,
throw it away. Yeastiness, which would be a sliminess, stickiness, this is very dry.
Really bad.
Throw it away. When in doubt, throw it out. These little bags make a ton of koji malt. So if you happen to make a batch that starts to go bad, ditch it. It's not worth your safety or your family's or your customers' safety.
Yeah, I'll say this is it's 1 gram to a kilogram, and you know, this right here is 10 grams. So you've got some room for experimentation. It's not worth the you know, the risk if something goes wrong. That being said, it's as long as you I think watch your sanitation. It's just, this is something that people have been able to pull off for about 3,000 years without much issue, so you can do it too. I believe in you, although some of the preparation seems kind of tricky, like the meat and all of that.
Yeah, the ingredient itself is not dangerous. The environment that we're putting, if you were going to do meat, if you were to put just the plain pork chop in there, it's going to, you know, be in a perfect environment for danger. But this will, you know, it encases it, similar to a dry like a dry aging process, just that the mold we're actually putting on there that'll help break it down and reduce the moisture, and then you get a better texture of meat.
In a lot of ways, this seems very weird. This reminds me a lot of the Prague powder we talked about a few episodes ago, because if you're the kind of chef who likes to have this creative control, this creative license, the ability to bring local into it in a way that you just can't do it other ways, if you're the kind of person who's like, making my own bacon seems really cool. Like, this unlocks some real superpowers, but let's say you bought it. Let's say you got it, and what's the... And you got it because you want to try the fuzzy pork chop or something. But, you know, what's the one thing that you're like, man, while you've got it, you've got plenty of rice malt. What's the one thing that you need to do, regardless of your culinary tastes, to get the most fun out of it?
I would suggest making miso, because that was probably the most rewarding for me.
Yeah.
It's a very long process. If you have local, you know, legumes or grains or anything that you wanted to make miso out of, you can use those, you can add it to it, and you can really customize your own. You want to go minimum of 6 months before you take the miso out and start using it. So it's very simple. You would mix the rice grain into some cooked legumes, break them down, press it, but when you press it, you get a byproduct, which is the tamari that I kind of talked about earlier, which is a naturally gluten-free soy sauce, depending on what you used for grains. But you'll get that tamari, which we had some out here earlier, but Mark thought he was supposed to drink it.
Yeah, you were like, wow, check this out, and usually that means consume this.
It's okay.
And I consumed what I gather is about a month's supply of tamari from your. It's okay.
But over time, the tamari will start coming out very thick and very viscous, and that stuff at the end is really special. You can put it into a little mason jar and build it up over time, and then just a little bit on a piece of sushi or even just some vegetables. There's so much flavor, so much umami that's coming out of that.
Yeah.
The fermentation process is so long, and it's really, really special stuff.
Now, tell us a little bit about the, because you're talking about the superpowers and its ability to kind of break down those tannins, the fats, the proteins. Is that what gives it kind of this superpower in denaturing the proteins for a marinade as well, or? Yeah,
so the best part, like I said, it has everything that you want to break down, starch, protein, fats, connective tissue, stuff like that. So with these marinades, which this is Shio Koji, and this is Shoyu Koji, these are basically salt water and rice malt and soy sauce and rice malt. You mix them together, let them kind of ferment for a few days, and then you can take it and put it, marinate a steak. You can put it on potatoes. You can put it on vegetables. This has sweetness, saltiness, umami. It's every flavor that you would want. It's an all-in-one seasoning. And then you can take it and cook them, and they already have the broken down starches, the broken down protein, and the broken down fats. So it cuts down the cook time. Say if you're making short ribs, you can marinate for a day and then cook, and then you have like a really beautiful, flavorful short rib that you can go a little bit closer to medium without having to braise for a long time. So this is a really amazing product.
And even though it's I don't want to say even though, but even though it's the basis for a lot of East Asian cuisine, when you make uses like this, it's not limited to I don't prepare Asian cuisine or something like that. It's you get a lot of use out of it, and that's why we wanted to feature it today, because it's one of those ingredients that maybe 3,000 years old doesn't mean it's the hot new thing. But, with 3,000 years of culinary success, it's something we want to introduce to you because you might not have gotten a chance to play around with it. And if you're looking for that chance to play around with it, you can pick up both these versions on www.modernistpantry.com. If you're looking for some inspiration, we've got a recipe post about this stuff.
Yep, so we have a recipe on how to make the koji and also how to make the Shio Koji and the Shoyu Koji right on blog.modernistpantry.com.
I was going to say that. Now I don't know what to do next. All right, so we talked a little bit today about how to make that malt. We talked about a brief version of the history, though I'll tell you, if you're ever looking to have a great time, read the detailed history for how koji made it to the United States. You'll get lost. You'll want to start your own TV show about the history of food, and invite me on, because that sounds absolutely fantastic. We talked about some of the tools you need to make this successful, and that is not that much. A clean place, but a proof box sounds like the best place to do it. We did some troubleshooting. Basically, if it's any color other than this, try again. You've got plenty, and it's just rice or whatever local grains you've got. What we didn't mention is of all of the colors of the wind that it can turn, yellow is one that you would mention means you might have let it go too long.
Yeah, so if you leave this in the proof box for a bit too long, the mold obviously is growing in there, and then it will flour. And I accidentally mentioned flour when I meant, growing, and the flouring process will kind of taint the koji. So you can pull it once it gets nice, thick, like a brick.
Yeah.
And it is white, you can take it off. If you get it just to the point where it starts to flour, you can take it. But don't let it go any further than that because it's going to kind of taint the flavor.
Yeah, and one of the neat things to point out is this isn't, we didn't compress it into this or anything like that. That's the structure of the mold kind of holding it all together. We talked a lot about how it grows and how to keep it from getting messed up. It's keep it clean, keep it in a cool, dark place away from sunlight because you use sunlight to kill mold. And this is a mold you want to keep around.
Yes.
And we invited you to try it because 3,000 years of experimentation with it have proved to be some delicious results. So use it for one of its classic uses. Use it for one of its, I call it easier uses with the marinade. But just try this stuff. You can get it at modernistpantry.com. Is there anything that we possibly could have left out about Koji? We only got 3,000 years of history to cover.
No, I think it's pretty good. And if we were to do a demo of miso, this would be a very, very long 2.5-year video. So.
Oh my gosh, we should have got like fake beards or something. All right, thank you so much for joining us here on WTF, where we transform food here in the Modernist Pantry Test Kitchen. If you loved this video, tell us, or hit that like button down below. If you want to ask a question or even suggest what we talk about next, leave us a comment, whether you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube. Those comments drive a lot of the ingredients that we talk about next, or even how we talk about them. And we want to thank a few of you that asked for more detailed demos. Well, we didn't do the full demonstration of the 2.5-year preparation of miso. We owe that suggestion to you guys, so thank you so much for that. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, especially on YouTube. That'll mean that you're one of the first to get this every week when we produce it. We publish it on Tuesdays-ish, and so that's something to look forward to. Head over to blog.modernistpantry.com where you can subscribe to emails that'll include our favorites of these episodes, as well as some key recipes and other kitchen inspirations. And I'm nearly out of breath, which means we're probably out of time.
We are.
All right, I'm Mark Frechette.
And I'm Scott Guerin.
Thank you so much for joining us today.